see what hopefully you want possibly to see me. You need to put it onto speaker view, and then I will be the big picture in front of you. And do make use of the chat button. So on my screen, if I hover at the bottom, it comes up, and I've got it sort of permanently as a margin at the side. So if you want to ask me any questions as we go along, that's the place to ask, and then I'll open it up the last sort of 10-15 minutes, and then we can have a general chat. So here are my flowers. I'm not sure whether you can see them, but they are looking amazing, aren't they? For a week old, and finally the lilies have come out, and they're absolutely gorgeous, and they've got a really heady scent. So that was the front, and then if I twist it round, you can see at the back, you know, I was trying to keep it quite flat because it was going to go up against my wall, but I have got some little lilies around the backs. Actually, it looks pretty good back and front, and would look good on a, you know, on a table if I had a, you know, a big enough house where I could put things on the middle of a table and have it displayed. So it does look good all round. Of course, if it was all round, it probably does need something there. But in terms of looking good from the front, I'm pretty pleased with the way that's turned out. But I feel now it's time to have another revamp. So the flowers are 1 week old. And if you are following along with me with your own flowers, I would say that probably I'm doing every single stage a little bit earlier than I would do normally, because my delivery box flowers from beginning to end, I reckon if I really, really squeeze every bit out of the flowers at the end, they would last 3 weeks, probably 2.5 weeks comfortably. So possibly I'm doing every stage of my revamp slightly earlier than you would want to. So if you are following along, don't feel just because today I'm going to do something different that you need to do that, because if you're enjoying your flowers as they are, enjoy them. Just when you think, you know, they need a bit of a primp and a preen and the water needs changing in your vase, have a go then. So I'm going to be really brave today, and I'm doing an arrangement that is really, really simple, but it's just a little bit different, and sometimes it's being brave enough to be bold enough to do something that feels a bit counterintuitive. So first thing I'm going to do is to take my flowers out of the water, put my vase to one side, and I'll show you the containers, and that's plural, that I'm going to rearrange my flowers into. So here goes. Actually, I'll move my chair out of the way. So flowers up. Actually, before I do that, I know that Mary was being my watcher for my pollen, and this lily has opened since. Actually, a couple of the lilies opened. So what I will do here, as I take the flowers out, I might take the lilies out first. Actually, I can't because they're all locked in. So I have to be slightly careful as I work, because I can't just lift everything up and put it flat on the table, because my lilies are beautifully open, and I don't want to crush the flower heads. So just sort of one false move and I might just crease or crunch. But you can see there the difference between the pollen that's been taken off, the bottom lily, and the pollen. You can just see it sort of dancing around. So it does add a beautiful 3D quality, a real depth to your lilies. But that's, if I knock it and shake it, that's going to be shattering all over the place. So 2 of the lilies have opened up since we last met. And this was another one around the back. So I'm going to go in, because I don't mind it being on my fingers. I'm going to go in like that. And actually there's a tiny bit of pollen dust. I don't know whether you can see it, just a tiny bit on there. So if I scrunch the lily up there and just take my kitchen towel, I'm just rubbing it off, but being really gentle. It's a flick off really rather than a rub off. And then that will go straight into the bin. So trying to work out how to put those lilies down without damaging them, so very carefully is the answer. My gladioli are looking slightly worse for wear. At the bottom here, the stems are, flower heads are definitely going over, so getting rid of those as I go. Actually on this one here as well. And when in doubt, pull it off. Is what is the mantra I'm going to use, because I know that once they're in the vase next couple of days, I don't want to go back in tomorrow and think, oh, I've sort of pulled something else off as well. So I'm being cruel to be kind. So peeling those off between my fingers. So I've still got some colour, and you can see that over the week we've gone from that stem that was barely open to having lots of full blooms here, and then coming right to the top. So this is the last lot of blooms here. But this one is a bit slower in its development. Oh, Joan's got an interesting question there. Have you heard that if you put pollen into the lily water, it helps to feed them? Is this true? I have never ever heard that, Joan. Never ever ever. Would it feed them, or do you think it's whether there is an element of laziness there or bad husbandry? Do you ever pick off the leaves from your houseplants that are dying and then you can't be bothered to put them in the bin and you just put them back onto the surface of the soil? Is it something like that that someone's had them in their hand and they just sort of, oh, I'll just throw them away and throw them back into the vase because they don't want to go and put them away? But I have never heard that. So we'd have to think the reason why the flowers the way of getting your flowers to last longer is to give them water, to give them nutrients which come through the flower food, and then all those old wives' tales about, you know, a drop of lemonade, that would be for the food, and the aspirin and the drop of bleach is that sort of an antibacterial, so to keep your water fresh. So what role then would the pollen play? It wouldn't clean the water because it would be a natural substance that would rot and decay. So it would only be the nutrient in the pollen that would be there to help the lilies ahead. I'm not an expert in plant biology, but my natural reaction is I don't think it's going to make a difference. And you told that by one of your tutors. Well, I'm going to have to look that up. So I'm not saying no, but I've certainly never ever heard that before. Never. So yes, you've got me thinking there. So different advice, different opinions, different experience. Very interesting. So we'll have to have a discussion about that in the group afterwards and see what everyone else experienced. I've never heard it before. But the thing with all these things is give it a go. But I would say with my lilies, I think that I would say with any flower, the watchword is your vase needs to be scrupulously clean in order that your water stays as fresh for as long as possible. And I feel, you know, I've put my flower food in the bucket in my water when I got the flowers. When I did my first refresh, I put flower food again. I'm not putting flower food in today. Number one, because I haven't got any sachets left, and number two, the rest of my sachets are too far away in my workshop. But again, I know that my glass vases I'm going to be using are really, really clean and the water is fresh, and I'll be able to see into the water to make sure anything that falls off, I can whip it out straight away. So I would have thought the pollen would have made the water go slightly hazy as well. So if you're arranging in a glass vase, is it not going to make it look vaguely like you've got your flowers in tea? Anyway, I won't disagree with another floristry tutor, but that's something we will have to explore further. So my last lot of flowers, just resting them carefully there. And then we've got my ruscus, which will go on forever and ever. And the reason why I couldn't get them out of the vase was because I tied them up loosely with string. That's why they were locked in there. So I will just separate it out so I can see what I've got. I've kept my alliums. I did put them back into my vase in the end, and they did make the show that I wanted them to make as a dramatic grouped element off to the side. So that is everything sorted out like that. So the quantity of flowers over the time that they are, well, the volume of flowers is expanding, but the quantity is decreasing, because every time I refresh my vase, I'm taking the dead flowers off and I'm recutting the stems. So the flowers will change over time. Even if you didn't rearrange them every time, your vase shape and your display would change every time. So the vases I've used so far, I've used a modern classic, an urn from IKEA. I've used my Wedgwood style urn. And then today I'm going to use some glassware. So as I say, I've made sure the glassware was scrupulously clean, and I filled up with water as well. So I've got a vase, a clear vase here. And this is the only vase actually of the collection of glassware I'm using that is actually a vase, and I went to a shop to buy it. So it's a matter of using what you've got at home. So collection of vases here, and then I've got, this is a Kilner jar, a very old Kilner jar. I'm going to put those flowers over here so you can see. And storage jar. And when it comes to the other jars, I haven't got a clue where these came from. They were probably gifts. You know, friends have been clearing out their cellars and giving me things. I picked up things in the charity shop. That's quite a nice shape, but I don't know what would have come in that originally. But I think a lot of them, well, I know that 2 of them are definitely kiln jars because it's written on the front, but I would guess there's some sort of storage or canning device. So I'm conscious that that is a display of glassware against a pale background. You can't see entirely what I'm going to do. But today's plan is to deconstruct the flower arrangement. We spent a lot of time arranging the flowers as an overall entity in the vase to make them really attractive. And now has come the stage where actually to see the flowers, because those lilies were getting all so busy, I want to pull them out of the vase arrangement and have them standing on their own, as almost like specimen in pieces. I could then dot these vases all the way around my house, or, and as I will be doing, is to group them together as a collection. So actually, although the flowers are getting shorter and the flower heads are getting less because I'm pulling them off as they die, the lilies are, you know, creating a volume, and I can create this sort of volume and this feeling of opulence and abundance by putting my flowers in a greater number of vases. So I've got 6 vases here, and I know I've got 5 different types of flower. And it's a matter of, the easiest flower arranging ever is to put a single flower into a single container, and then you start to see it with all that space. So from that original arrangement, which stood up, you know, in my vase here to here, it's quite a good size. I can make something that's wider overall, taking into account each of the vases, plus a bit of the overhang as well for the flowers. So I can create impact, but it's ultimate simplicity as well. So let's go in for impact and come in with those lilies first of all. So I've got my scissors to hand. I recut the stems because it just is good practice to recut the stems every time. And because I've cut in the stems each time, it may be that I have to take off some of the leaves as well, because as everything gets shorter, you don't want the leaves getting into the water. And with that lovely tall lily there, where it was a problematic before, it was branching out, and I had that good show at the front, but also had the lily heads at the back that I couldn't see. Because I've got it on its own vase, you can see everything. You can tell there, well, probably it's a little bit pale for you, but there's 4 lily flowers there, and I can see all those lily flowers. And actually, to get the stem to stand up, I'm just sort of resting it on one of those heads. So I've got one taller, and this was the slightly shorter lily. Now, the only thing to watch out for, I've put my tallest lily in my tallest vase, so the stem can reach right down to the bottom and sort of anchors itself in the vase a little bit. You don't want to put a really top heavy flower into a smaller vase, because you may find that it topples out or just looks a bit unbalanced, or even if it doesn't topple out, you just get that sensation that it's going to fall out because it's just too big. And if you find that you haven't got a vase that suits, it may be that you might need to sacrifice one of the flower heads in order that it does sit more comfortably. And let's do that. Let's be brave. I'm going to take off that flower head out at the bottom so that I can get the main stem to sit more comfortably in the vase. So recut the stem as well at the bottom and come in. So I could have it like that. So at the end, I will photograph this against my my grey wall so you can see what I'm doing. Although I've cut the flower head off, I will save it. And perhaps I even need a smaller vase, perhaps for the notional leftovers. Now I'm cheating. Oh, yes, I have managed to get the flower head in there. It is in water. I thought perhaps it was just dangling for the moment. So you will need to make sure that all your stems are actually in water, but that is the beauty of arranging in glassware. You can see as that water level has been taken up. And today I'm filming on a really, really hot day. Feels like I need a glass of water, and certainly my flowers will be needing water. So you can see straight away I've made, you know, it's not difficult, but I have made a dramatic impact by separating out the flowers. Next, we will go with the gladioli. So again, it'd be nice to keep things long that were already long instead of cutting them down, you know, too short too soon. But that's up to you to decide what you want to do. So what I might do here, I've got my more open heads here, the slightly smaller heads here, and then the buds that are just have got some more to give at the end. So I might think about putting those together so it almost looks like one long stem, a single stem of gladioli, but I've put it together, it's the 3 stems together. Now all of my jars here have got really wide mouths. I don't have any vases that are glassware with tiny mouths. So when I put them in the vase, they're just going to slop to one side. So I'm going to work with that. And I've got a bit of string. You could do this in elastic band. I'm going to tie these together to hold them fast. So a bit of string in my hand, wrap it round nice and securely, and then I'm going to tie a knot. And another way of arranging flowers, they don't always have to, I mean, the traditional way would have everything radiating out from the centre and being even and balanced. But you could make a show of things, especially when you're using glassware, because it has these sleek modern lines. I've got straight-sided vases, I haven't got any cut glass vases here, that I could, I'm going to cut those stems down to length, but also so they're the same length, so they sit properly. There's no reason why you can't have your flowers angled out. Actually, that's not going to quite work. I need to pull that one down a bit because it's wobbling around. So as long as it's intentional. So I often talk about, you know, stopping your flowers slopping around in your vase, but what if having them off at an angle was part of your design ethos? And you sometimes see this with tulips or spring flowers, or flowers that have got, you know, a nice simple stem and a really impactful head, like gerbera, for instance. Bundle them together, tie them together, and put them into your vase or container, so they make that dramatic impact. They're off to one side, so you could have a whole collection of long straight stems, but all going in slightly different directions. And because it was intentional, a proper part of the design work, it will look okay. And what you'll do when you set this sort of vase arrangement up at home is decide whether the look looks right for you, and only you will know that. If having glassware doesn't sit in your, you know, medieval country cottage, you'll be arranging your flowers in something different. But likewise, if you had a really modern open space, this kind of arrangement would work really well. So it's about challenging yourself to be something really different, but equally doing something you're comfortable with. So it's always, you know, nice to try something new, but don't feel you've got to try something new. If you're really uncomfortable with it, you end up with something you don't like, and it just doesn't suit what you've got at home. So we've just got Mary joined us. Hello, Mary. Thank you for leaving your note. And then with I think I'm going to do the same thing with my alliums here. So making sure, again, I did line them all up, so I should be able to actually just tap them onto the table and they will realign themselves. I'm not quite sure that is going to work though. Just make sure they're realigned. Got a nice sort of bundle of them in my hand, and I will do the same thing. Now, if you have an elastic band, you could tie up with elastic band, whatever it is you've got to hand. And if you had, you know, you could tie them with ribbon, anything you've got to hand, but you need to make sure that if it's string or ribbon, well, particularly the ribbon, it's not actually in the water and getting wet. That would look a little bit of a soggy mess. So again, I've laid these on the table. You can't see what I'm doing at the moment, but I am knotting them together with the string. And then I will recut the stems, and then we'll just do that all in one go. So I would then find myself, and perhaps this time I want to go that way. But does that feel a bit discordant? I've got one coming this way, one going that way. Well, I might want to create a little bit of you know, repetition in that placement by going that way, but then you don't see these flowers so well against the lilies. So that's when you can start playing around with it and deciding where you want them to go. I mean, perhaps it might be better so you can see them in the purpose of video coming out that way. But it may be that when I finally get them set up, I don't really like them to do it. So nothing is set in stone. You can adjust, you can change. If you decide that the gladioli are too long, come back in and chop them down. If you think actually you would rather you mingled everything together, go ahead and do a mingle. And then the last bit of stems we've got is the soft ruscus, which is still looking really, really healthy. So I could go through, you know, and add a bit of green to each of the each of the vases. But for me, I think it's just making it look a tiny bit too traditional, and we're trying to break some rules. So I think I might do here is exactly the same and bundle my green together and perhaps showcase the green on its own and have that as a vase of green. It then starts to pick up, can you see, the dark green here picks up on the green, the natural leaf of the lily. So we've got a small pointed oval on the soft ruscus and a large elongated oval shaped leaf on the lily. So again, they sort of talk to each other, and that's what you're getting in a sense of a pleasing harmony, is making sure that you've got a consistent feature throughout your arrangement. So I've got consistency with my shining glassware. It's not all the same. There's some vintage pieces, but they are primarily straight-sided. I've then got 3 vases with lilies in it, and then the green talks to the green, and then I've got these 2 bundled sections of green as well, a more linear form at taking your eye off. So I won't quite know whether it's right until I set it up, because of course now at the moment I'm seeing it all in reverse image as I'm talking to you. So it will all need to be just adjusted. Now with the greenery here, I don't think I need to tie it together. I think it's going to rest quite naturally, but I will hold it up to my vase, conscious that you can't see particularly clearly there, but I think it is clearer on the edited video that goes out to you. So I'm cutting those at the same angle and putting in the side there. So that adds a little bit of a backdrop to the gladiola. They don't seem so lost and on their own, but I might just trim them down a bit. They're still keeping the length, there's still a long flower, but just to get them to nestle down. But, you know, does that look better there? Or should I perhaps come in and, you know, put it in with the lilies over the edge? But is that starting to get a bit too frilly? I've got the lily that's quite busy, the alliums are quite busy with their shaggy little heads. And where does it best go? So we've done this before, haven't we? You know, does it look better with or better without? And now I take it away, you know, does it look better just having it clean and fresh? You'll have to let me know in the comments, do you prefer it like that, as a real clean and clipped look, or to add it in at the back to finish off, or even off at that. So I'm going to leave it there for the moment. And then I've got two lone little gladioli left, which are looking a tiny bit sorry. So these are the black flowered gladiola, which didn't seem to have as long as vase life as that, the really bright pink. And you know, I need to decide really, has the time come to throw those away, or have they got a chance of one last little bit of life? And because I don't like to throw anything away, what I am going to do is chop them down really short. And let's see about just putting them down somewhere just to keep them going. So it's added a little bit of flash of darkness of colour there. So again, perhaps it's grounding the arrangement a little bit. So again, time will tell. I'll have to have a good look at that when I've got it up against my plain wall. So I think this arrangement does look good against a plain backdrop. It becomes a little bit of a sort of almost botanical work of art. So let's see what comments you're saying. Better without the greenery, thinks Lynette. Oh, Mary as well, better without. I think it's just too green and visually heavy. So that's interesting as well, because even though it's a really fine-leaved greenery, sometimes things can look too heavy and out of place. But also it's got quite a shaggy outline, whereas everything else is quite clipped and almost sort of architectural in its shape. And it's almost like a bit of a conflict between having the glamorous lily with a more perhaps country-style greenery. So yeah, we'll have to continue that discussion, I think. And the best way to tell, I always find, is set up your arrangement, go away, come back again and look at it, or take photographs. So it's easy enough to do here because I can just whip it out of the vase or take the whole vase away and just do a compare and contrast. Do you prefer it with that element or without it? And what would it look like if you changed your flowers around? So I've kept my lilies grouped in the middle. So I've got my shortest offcut there, which is saying hello, and then your eye travels up and then back down to the edge here, and then it catches onto the alliums and flies out that way, and then from the central lily there catches out onto the 2 stems there. But yes, we'll have to, the jury's out, I think, on the piece of greenery. We'll have to discuss that a little bit more. So that is what I'm demonstrating for you today. That is it, and that's why I say this is a really simple arrangement. I think the message for today is to break the rules, deconstruct your bouquets and your arrangements. They don't always have to be arranged arrangements. They could be specimen vase arrangements, and I do think that when they are spread out like this, it's almost like you're walking into your own mini florist shop and you're getting the chance to look at every single flower. And it works because everything's been grouped together. But of course, if you wanted to have the same, you know, make up mini vases and just have lots of little arrangements, again, that would look beautiful as well, but it's just not today's look that I wanted to show you. And it's down to personal taste. Whatever you feel happy with, as long as your flowers are in water, are continuing to flower, and your vases are nice and clean, so your water is nice and fresh, just go for it. You've got my permission to break every rule there is, and don't be too constrained, and just have fun with it. So what I'm going to do now, we will have, I will take you all off mute. We'll have a little race to who's going to get off mute first. And then I will come, I might have to move my flowers a bit because of course you can't hear me when I sit to the side of my laptop. So obviously the microphone is very one directional. So I will just do that, shuffle around, and then we will put you all on. Ask away, let me know what you think. Do you think I made a mistake and I should just have chopped the stems down and kept my arrangement as is? So we can have a little chat about it.